27 missed calls, 14 voicemails, 53 texts. At 3:17 a.m., my phone lit up like an emergency flare every call from my family. My stomach dropped before I even unlocked it. 27 missed calls will do something to you even before you know what they mean. I'd been asleep for 4 hours when my phone lit up the first time. I silenced it, rolled over. A family group chat notification, a single call from my mother. Normal-ish, I told myself in the half-conscious way of someone who does not want to be awake at 1 a.m. and is willing to rationalize. By 3:17 a.m., when I finally sat up and looked at the screen properly, the number had compounded into something that could not be rationalized. 27 missed calls, 14 voicemails. My mother, my father, my Aunt Rita, my mother again. A number I didn't recognize with an Italian country code that had called 4 times in sequence. I pressed play on the first voicemail before I was fully conscious. My mother's voice. Pure, ugly sobbing. Not the performed cry, the actual one. The kind that makes the voice unsteady at the consonants. Vivian, please call us. They're going to put her in a cell. Please, call us back. I was in Boston. My family was at my sister Olivia's wedding in Lake Como. I hadn't gone. I need to tell you why I hadn't gone, because you are going to want to judge me for it, and you are entitled to that, and I want to give you the accurate version before you do. My sister Olivia is 29. She is the kind of person who makes rooms better by being in them. Warm, generous, the specific light that some people carry naturally, the kind you find yourself standing near without quite realizing you've moved. I love my sister. This story is not about not loving her. Matteo Rossi came into her life 11 months before the wedding. Fast by any standard. Faster by the standard of someone who has watched enough financial disasters to have developed a specific alertness to pace. And I have watched enough because I have spent 14 years in financial compliance work, first at a regional bank, and then as a senior analyst at a firm that specializes in fraud detection. This is relevant. Keep it in mind. Matteo was 37, Italian, based in Milan, working in something he described as luxury property consulting, with the deliberate vagueness of a man who has learned that vagueness reads as sophistication to the right audience. He had the particular quality of someone who makes people comfortable immediately, not aggressively charming, nothing that triggers the alarm, just warm and attentive and exactly present enough. My parents loved him on first meeting. I was slower. The engagement came after 6 months. I said the things you say, congratulations, I'm happy for you, and meant them, and also sat with the pace. 6 months, Lake Como wedding. The venue alone was going to cost what I know my family does not casually have. Matteo is handling it, Olivia said, when I asked carefully about finances. Matteo is handling it is a sentence that means different things depending on what you know about the person it refers to. I filed it. At month 8, Olivia called me excited about the venue confirmation. At month 9, she sent photos of the dress. At month 10, the RSVPs went out, and the invitation to me had Matteo's name spelled in a flourished font over the Lake Como Villa address, like the name of a place he owned. I declined. I told Olivia I had a work conflict I couldn't move. This was partially true. The fuller truth was that I had been watching this unfold for 10 months, with the specific unease of someone who recognizes a pattern and cannot yet prove it and is not willing to walk into the middle of it. My parents called me cold. My father specifically said I was jealous. Maybe. I've thought about it. What I know is that on September 14th, while my family was at a villa on Lake Como watching my sister become Mrs. Matteo Rossi, I was in my Boston apartment doing laundry and second-guessing myself in the specific way you second-guess yourself when you can see a thing clearly but cannot prove it and might be wrong. I was not wrong, but I didn't know that yet. The first voicemail was my mother crying. The second was my father, clipped and fast. Vivian, call immediately. Serious situation. The third, my Aunt Rita, who almost never calls me, speaking in the lowered voice she uses for emergencies. Your parents need you. Please call. The fourth, fifth, and sixth were variations on the first three. The seventh was different. My mother again, but steadied now. The voice of someone who has moved through the initial panic into a mode of specific request, which is actually more alarming because it means the situation has become concrete. Vivian, there was an incident at the villa. There's damage. They want 25,000 euros or they are going to detain Olivia. Your father has the details. Please, call us. 25,000 euros. I was sitting on the edge of my bed in the dark, and I pressed pause and sat with that number. I called my father. He answered on the first ring. Behind him, noise, overlapping voices, the specific acoustic chaos of a public space, a man's voice in Italian that had the cadence of authority. The villa, my father said before I could speak. There was an incident. Damage. They want 25,000 euros, or they're going to detain Olivia until it's resolved. What kind of damage? I said. A pause. It doesn't matter right now. We need you to wire the money. You're the only one with what kind of damage, Dad? Longer pause. There were some contractual issues with the venue, payments that weren't made. There's a dispute. Something sharpened inside me. Not panic. Alertness. The specific mental state I've spent 14 years developing. The one that activates when a detail doesn't fit. Where's Matteo? I said. Silence. Not the silence of someone thinking. The silence of someone who has been waiting for this question and has been hoping it would come later. He left, my mother's voice behind him. Left the party? No, my father's voice flat and quick. Left. Gone. I processed the word. His phone is dead, my mother said. We can't reach him. The cash gift envelopes, I said. Not a question. Another silence. silence. Olivia's jewelry case? I said. The silence confirmed it. Send the 25,000, my father said, and his voice had shifted into the register I know well, the one that is smooth with urgency, that has always been able to create motion in me when I wasn't paying attention. We'll pay you back. We always put the officer on the phone, I said. Protests, shuffling. My mother saying my name in the tone she uses when she thinks I'm being difficult, then a different voice. Male, measured, careful English with the specific precision of someone conducting professional communication in a second language. Miss Hartley, my name is Sergeant Davide Conti, Carabinieri Station, Lake Como District. I understand there is a dispute regarding your family's arrangement with the villa. Sergeant Conti, I said, is my sister being arrested? There is the possibility of temporary detention pending investigation of a contractual dispute. What is the charge? A pause. Fraud, he said. I felt my mind go very quiet. Sergeant Conti, I said, whose name is on the rental contract for the villa? The sound of paper. A pause longer than the others. Then he said my name, first name, last name, correct spelling, mine. I ended the call. I opened my banking app. Normal. Everything I expected. Then I opened my credit monitoring service. I use Experian, have for years. The professional habit of someone who has spent a career watching what happens when people don't watch their own numbers. There it was. A new European credit line. $18,000. Opened 3 weeks ago through a lending platform I had never used. Linked to my social security number, my US address, and a verification email that had apparently been sent to an address I did not recognize 3 weeks ago. I pulled up Olivia's Instagram on my other screen. 3 weeks ago. Engagement photos in Tuscany, champagne, her face bright against the hills, Matteo's arm around her shoulders, smiling the smile that makes people sign things before reading them. 3 weeks ago, while they were posting champagne photos, someone was opening a credit line in my name. They had my social security number, my date of birth, my home address. My family knew all of those things. I sat in the dark of my apartment and understood, with the particular clarity that arrives when you have been in denial about something, and the denial has just been made untenable, exactly what had happened. The wedding had been funded in my name, without my knowledge, without my consent. This was not a crisis. This was a setup, and I had been invited to fly to Italy and watch it happen in real time. And when I hadn't come, they had called me from a foreign country at 3:17 a.m. and asked me to pay for my own betrayal. My hands were completely still. That surprised me. I had expected them to shake. They didn't. What I felt was not the adrenaline of panic, but the colder, more functional sensation of someone who has identified the situation accurately and is now working the problem. I called my father back. Why is my name on the villa contract? I said. Silence. Then whispering. He was covering the phone, talking to my mother or someone nearby. We needed someone with good credit, my mother said. Matteo said it was standard for the international booking, that they needed a US-based guarantor with strong. My credit line was opened 3 weeks ago, I said, without my knowledge. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence. Not the silence of someone who didn't know. The silence of someone who did. I hung up. It was 3:31 a.m. I made coffee. Not because I needed it, but because having something to do with my hands while my brain worked was useful, and I had learned years ago not to make significant decisions without giving the adrenaline something physical to discharge. I opened my laptop. The next 2.5 hours were the most focused work I have done outside of a professional setting. Screenshots, the credit line, time-stamped, with the account opening date clearly visible, the credit monitoring alert, every call log from the night, times, numbers, duration, the voicemails, which I recorded by playing them on speaker into my laptop's audio capture software, each one date and time logged. I pulled my credit report, the full version, all 3 bureaus, and found the inquiry trail, the hard pull on my credit from the European lending platform, 3 weeks and 4 days ago, the application data, as much of it as I could access, the email address used for account verification, which was a slight variation on my real email, my first initial and last name at a free provider I'd never used, not quite mine, close enough to pass automated verification. Someone had built an identity profile using my real data and a constructed contact address, someone who had my real data. By 5:30 a.m., I had a complete file, 12 documents, all screenshots, all time-stamped, organized in chronological order in a folder I uploaded to secure cloud storage and forwarded to my personal attorney, Margaret Chen, 11 years in financial fraud and civil litigation, Boston-based, whose number I have kept in my phone since a client of my former bank recommended her 3 years ago. I sent Margaret a summary email with subject line, identity theft, European credit fraud, family involvement, call when available. Then I went to work. 6 a.m. Fraud alert filed with all 3 credit bureaus, effective immediately. 6:17 a.m. The 18,000 European credit line frozen through the lending platform's fraud reporting portal, with a cross-border identity theft claim attached. 6:43 a.m. Identity theft report filed with the FTC's identity theft Gov portal, which generates an official case number that can be used in subsequent filings. 6:59 a.m. I forwarded everything, the complete file, the case number, a summary letter I had drafted explaining the sequence, to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, which handles cross-border financial fraud involving U.S. citizens. At 7:02 a.m., my father called. The payment failed, he said, no preamble. His voice had dropped the smoothness and was using something rawer underneath. You froze the funds. You froze them. Yes, I said. You are going to let your sister sit in a foreign in jail. His voice was rising. Your own sister. Over money, over paperwork. Vivian, this is family. Put Sergeant Conti back on, I said. What? No, you need to listen to me. Put the sergeant on the phone, Dad, right now. A long, furious pause. Then the sound of the phone changing hands. Miss Hartley, Sergeant Conti said. Sergeant Conti, I said. I have formally filed a cross-border identity theft claim in the United States with an FTC case number indicating that my identity was used without my consent to open the credit line and execute the villa contract. If my sister knowingly participated in an agreement using fraudulent documentation in my name, how does that affect her situation? A pause. It shifts the liability considerably, he said carefully. If the documentation used to secure the contract was fraudulent, the contractual obligation itself is voided. However, if any party to the wedding arrangements knowingly used fraudulent identity documentation, he paused again, that would constitute a separate criminal matter for those individuals. I understand, I said. Thank you. My father grabbed the phone back. You are destroying this family, he said. Do you understand what you are doing? You are choosing paperwork over your own sister. You used my social security number, I said. You opened a credit line in my name without asking me. You put my name on a foreign property contract without my knowledge or consent. And you called me at 3 in the morning to ask me to pay for it. I kept my voice level. No, you destroyed this. I'm just documenting it. I ended the call. Margaret called me at 8:15 a.m. She had read the file. You did everything right, she said. The timeline is clean, the documentation is solid, and the fraud alert is active. The IC3 filing gives you federal case standing. She paused. Walk me through the family piece. I walked her through it. All of it. Not just the credit line, but the 11 months before, the pattern I had watched develop, the reasons I hadn't gone. Margaret listened without interrupting, which is what good attorneys do when they are building a complete picture. The question, she said when I finished, is what you want to do about the family involvement specifically. The credit line fraud is clean. That's identity theft. The case essentially builds itself. The question is your parents' role. They gave someone my information, I said. Willingly? Yes. And they called you at 3 in the morning and asked you to wire 25,000 euros to resolve a contract signed in your name without your consent. Yes. A pause. Vivian, Margaret said, that's not passive. That's knowing participation in identity fraud. I sat with that. I know, I said. What do you want to do? I thought about every time I had quietly restructured my parents' finances when things got difficult. The credit card I had paid down for them twice. The business loan I had co-signed for my father 8 years ago that I had ultimately absorbed. Every time I had been called reliable in the tone of voice that meant, we know you'll handle it. Like reliability was permission. I want Matteo prosecuted, I said. For whatever he is. I want my name clean. And I want my parents to understand that there are consequences for the thing they did. Okay, Margaret said. Here's what happens next. What happened next involved 3 phone calls and a significant amount of international paperwork. The first call was to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, where Margaret had a contact, an agent named Robert Daly, 9 years in cross-border financial fraud, who had been assigned the IC3 referral from my filing. Agent Daly had already begun pulling records. He asked me questions for 40 minutes with the focused efficiency of someone who already knew most of the answers and was confirming the timeline. Your instinct to document before you did anything else, he said near the end of the call. That's what makes these cases work. I work in fraud detection, I said. I know, he said. I read your file. The second call was to Interpol's Financial Crimes Coordination Unit, which Margaret handled through her firm's international contacts, submitting my documentation package as supporting evidence for what was already, apparently, a flagged pattern associated with Matteo's name. He was not unknown to them. This is the part that I want you to understand, because it is the part that reframes everything. Matteo Rossi was not improvising with my sister. He had done this before. The pattern, as Agent Daly later explained it to me, was specific. Identify a target with a trusting family, maintain a fast and emotionally consuming romantic relationship, use a family member's identity and credit access to fund a large public event that couldn't easily be unwound without social cost, extract cash and valuables on the event day, disappear before the liability became clear. There were 3 prior incidents in the Interpol file. Different names, different cities. Same structure. My sister was not his first Olivia. The third call was the one I did not make. Instead, I received it. Sergeant Conti at 2:14 p.m. calling to inform me that my formal fraud filing had been received by the Italian Financial Crimes Unit, that the villa contract had been flagged for investigation, and that given the circumstances, Olivia's detention was not being pursued. She was not being charged. She was a victim too. I should have felt relieved. I did feel relieved. I also felt the complicated thing underneath the relief, the understanding that my sister had loved someone who was running a scheme, and that the same people who had handed him my social security number had also handed him her heart, and that the damage to her was going to be different from the damage to me, but was not smaller. Matteo was arrested 2 days later. Milan, Malpensa Airport. He was attempting to board a flight to Montenegro with a bag containing, among other things, the cash gift envelopes from 12 tables of wedding guests and my sister's jewelry case. Agent Daly called me with the news. Coordinated with Interpol and Italian financial crimes, he said. The prior cases you're aware of, plus yours, gave them enough to execute at the airport. What's he looking at? I said. Italian law for the local charges. Federal referral for the U.S. identity fraud. The Italian prosecutor prosecutor is talking about a pattern of conduct enhancement given the prior incidents. He paused. Your documentation was part of the arrest package. Your name is in the official case file. Victim of identity misuse. My name. On a document I had not signed. In a country I had not visited. At a wedding I had not attended. At least this time the document was accurate. Olivia called me from the airport the day after Matteo's arrest. She had been staying in a hotel in Milan with my parents, in the specific suspended state of people who have been through something and are waiting for the administrative aftermath to resolve before they can begin processing what actually happened. She sounded the way people sound when they have cried for days and have run out of the kind of crying that has energy in it and are into the quieter kind. I didn't know about your credit, she said. I need you to know that. I know, I said. I knew about the guarantor thing, she said. Matteo said it was normal, that for international bookings, they needed a US-based guarantor, and that it would just be paperwork. It wouldn't affect you at all. A pause. I should have asked you. Yes, I said. You should have. I trusted him, she said. I know you did, I said. She was quiet for a moment. You tried to tell me, she said. Not an accusation, just a fact she was putting down somewhere it would stay. I didn't have proof, I said. I just had a feeling. You were right, she said. I know. I'm sorry, she said. This is the part that is most complicated for me to explain, because I am not a person who performs forgiveness on a schedule, and I was not ready in that moment to say it's okay and mean it. And I have never been willing to say things I don't mean to people I love to make the moment feel cleaner than it is. I hear you, I said. I need some time. She said she understood. I believe she did. My parents called the day after Olivia. My father on the same number he'd used at 3:17 a.m. His voice had none of the smoothness left. What it had instead was the specific quality of someone who has been through a significant external event and is using the external event to avoid the internal accounting. You must be relieved, he said, that it worked out. What does worked out mean to you? I said. A pause. He's arrested. You're cleared. It's over. My credit was used without my consent, I said, by someone who had my personal information from my family. I filed federal fraud reports. I spent the night doing damage control on my credit profile. That's the working out you're describing. We made a mistake, he said. The specific sentence structure of an admission that is designed to close a conversation rather than open one. You gave my social security number to a con man, I said. And then you called me at 3 in the morning and asked me to wire 25,000 euros to fix a contract signed in my name, without apologizing for that first. Silence. We were trying to save Olivia, he said. By using me, I said. The way you have always used me, because I'm reliable. I let the word sit there. That word doesn't mean what you think it means, Dad. It's not permission. He didn't respond. I love you, I said, and I am incredibly angry at you. Both of those things are true, and neither one cancels the other out. I'll talk to you when I'm ready. I ended the call. They have not apologized. Not in the way that means anything. Not I understood what we did, and I understand that it was wrong, and I am asking you to believe that I know the difference. What they have offered is the version that means let's move forward, which is a different thing and which I am not currently able to accept. Maybe that changes. Time tends to do things. My credit file took 6 weeks to fully clear. The $18,000 credit line was voided and removed from my report. The hard inquiry notation was flagged as fraudulent and removed from all 3 bureaus. The villa contract was nullified as part of the Italian fraud investigation, which meant there was no civil liability attached to my name in that jurisdiction. Margaret filed the civil identity theft claim on my behalf against the lending platform for inadequate verification procedures, which was settled in mediation 4 months later for an amount I am not permitted to disclose, but which covered her fees and then some. My name in the official Italian fraud case file. Vittima di utilizzo indebito di identità. Victim of identity misuse. The case against Matteo is ongoing. The Italian prosecutor is pursuing the pattern of conduct enhancement. Agent Daly has told me the federal charges are proceeding on the U.S. identity fraud counts. The man who used my name is in a courtroom in Milan because I didn't send the money, because I asked whose name is on the contract before I reached for my wallet, because I have spent 14 years learning to recognize the structure of a situation before I move inside it. I have not been back to my parents' house since September. This is not a permanent state. It is a current one, the honest distance of someone who has been hurt in a specific way by specific people and is not yet sure what the relationship looks like after it, and is not willing to pretend a certainty she doesn't have. Olivia and I have talked 4 times. Real conversations, not the managed kind. She is in therapy, which is the correct response to having had your wedding be a crime scene. She is doing the work that the situation requires. I respect her for that. The last time we talked, she said, I keep thinking about the invite, that you didn't come. I know, I said. You knew something, she said. Not specifically, I said. Just the pace, the spending, the smile. She was quiet for a moment. I want to be someone who would have listened, she said. You might be now, I said. She laughed. The real one, briefly. The one I grew up next to. That's a terrible way to learn it, she said. Most ways are, I said.